here. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. And we had a request to go back and get further discussion of the two options that we'd laid out and perhaps have some discussion of other options as well. So President Johnson, could you tee that up?
Chair, before President Johnson speaks, I'd like to move to table Mary's motion.
Okay. The motion to table is...
I'll second.
It's been seconded. Brandy, can you call the roll on the motion to table?
Regent Tuber?
Yes.
Regent Beretta?
Yes.
Regent Anderson?
No.
Regent Parker?
Yes.
Regent Hughes?
No.
Regent O'Neill?
Yes.
Regent Garrett?
Yes.
Regent Hargraves? Regent Perdue?
No.
Regent Banya?
Yes.
Regent Davies?
Yes.
8 in favor, 3 opposed.
Thank you. I think we could have, in Chair's opinion, we could have had the discussion that we wanted to have under that motion, but I think it's appropriate to take that off the table so that we can have a broader discussion than was simply encompassed by that motion. So, Regent O'Neill.
In terms of process, I do think that we have to make key critical decisions and give the president direction through a motion before we leave here today.
Correct.
So please, and the only reason why I voted the way I voted is to give our, the regents more time to discuss, to ask the questions, and to deliberate. So can you please, in your chair role, lay out what the strategy will be and the process will be so that we ensure when we leave here today that we will move on a decision so that we can give the board, the president direction.
We have until about noon today to make this. So what I would like to...
But Mr. Chair, if I may, I think this is one of the largest decisions facing this board in the last 100 years. So I am willing to clear my calendar today if that's what we need. But I just think that it's really going to be important that we figure out what our strategic process is. And that we know that, that when we leave this room today, that we've given the president some direction.
Right. So that's my goal too, is that we do that. I think that the most helpful thing would be to hear, as Regent Parker asked, to have some presentation of from the chancellors of their view of where we are, and to focus back in on those sort of shared value statements that we talked about earlier, and to have discussion around which one of these options we think gets us closer to those, and then and when that discussion is ripe, I think we should ask for another motion. So, President Johnson.
Did you? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to ask that folks go to slide 13 in the presentation, and I just have a few comments, and then I'll hand it to the chancellors who've arranged the speaking order there. Let's see. So I'll head back. I think I'll just start right here. So that's slide 14. And this is the direction that I gave the chancellors. And that is, given our current organizational structure and given a state budget reduction of $136 million, of course, the actual effect will likely be substantially more than that, given the negative impact on enrollment and the tuition that comes from enrollment, given a negative impact on other revenue sources. And of course, every day we delay, the effect of not having made reductions simply increases. But I gave them these numbers, and these are pro-rata distributions. So if UAA's percentage of our UGF is X, then X times 136 gives us 50 million. And then I just applied that same standard to the other universities here. And so with that, I'll invite the chancellors to go ahead and I'll have this. So if you could tell me what slide you want to focus on, I'm happy to do that.
President Johnson, excuse me, I have a question from Regent Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I looked at this slide several times going through. Within that 136 million, I mean, I add this up and that's what the total is. Do we have dollars set aside out of that 136 for interim concerns or the transitioning costs and so forth, that type of thing?
We have some very limited, and we'll talk about it, unrestricted fund balance, one-time monies, but there is no one-time money provided by the state for transition.
Okay, and your concept was not to take it out of that money. I mean, or I don't even know if we can take it out of that money.
I'm not sure. I mean,
transition money, can we take it out of the state money?
Well, the state money is 192 million. The cut is what's 136.
I'm sorry, taking it out of the 192.
Wow, we're already coming down 41%. So that's a pretty monumental to cut deeper in order to transition.
But we definitely need some transition money.
Yes.
I mean, that's a need, and I saw that as something that should be, in effect, distributed.
Yeah, and there are, you'll hear about, to some extent, in the Chancellor's plans and in others, the one university model where we are looking at certain one-time revenue sources, monetizing physical assets, right. For example, unrestricted fund balance, which of course is very, very lean because we've been using it the last several years, but that'll be something that we talk about.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't want to be in any way disruptive to the presentation for either you, President Johnson, or the chancellors, because I think this is the crux of what we're here for, to hear what your recommendations are. But I would ask whether or not it's appropriate that we intervene with questions as we go, or that we keep them bottled up so that we're looking anxious and angry during the process of the presentation. I guess my point is that already I've got questions about how the distribution or how the reductions would be allocated. Is that, do we have the ability to determine what the FTE ratios are, what the proportionate ratio of, proposed cuts might be? And I think that if we can just intervene with those questions, we don't necessarily have to have the answers immediately, but I think that we need to have a placeholder where we can come back and look at what the implications are.
Well, I'm happy to. I like the angry and anxious look, Regent Tuber, but but I'm happy. I mean, we evaluate always when we look at pro rata reductions or increases either way. We have several ways in which to look at that. One is share of UGF. And because it's a UGF reduction, that's the one we applied here. And at other times, we apply them based on share of enrollment. That's a common way in which we distribute either reductions or increases in a pro-rata way. Mm-hmm.
Regent Parker.
Thank you. And looking at this potential cost reductions, proportional reductions, and the information that came from the chancellors, since this was submitted, there's been a group working to identify a way for the three universities to work. And the question to the chancellors would be, since you guys have been talking, would you change your numbers and your allocations that you had originally identified based on the discussions that have been going on?
I think it's a super question, and it's exactly what they will be talking about here today. So let me hand it over to the chancellors, and you can get into your approach to the necessary reductions in our current structure.
One other quick question.
Just a quick question about this slide, President. What is this relative to the overall budgets at the universities? Is it 20%?
41%.
So no, to their everything they bring in to the campus. That's what I'm asking.
It's roughly 15%, I would say.
So
because,
the 50 million, the UAA means a 15% reduction. The 68 million means 15% reduction to the campus.
To the campus, but in addition to that, again, we're going to see ripple effects,
Right.
Additional reductions, so that there will be negative effects on other funds as well. But again, we're trying to have a constant here.
Approximate is 15% across statewide UAS, UAF, and UAA.
Well, it's basically UGF is roughly 40% of the total.
Right.
And so,
that.
0.4 times.
So whatever's to the overall
It's roughly
unit.
15%.
Okay, thank you.
Regent Garrett.
Thanks, everyone. I really like how we're doing this value-centered conversation, and I would like to encourage that we continue writing things down. So is it appropriate to invite Myron to come and add values as they come up? And I would like to add accreditation to this list, which is not up there. Thank you.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah,
All right.
I think we're ready.
Wonderful. All right. First of all, before I begin, I would like to add to what others have said, my appreciation to the regents. You are volunteers. Many of you have very, very busy lives. You put in a lot of time on this, and even more lately. And I just want to express my gratitude, our gratitude to you for the work that you do for us. So, yes, it is true that we were asked to submit proposed cuts according to these proportional reductions. And we got these instructions on either July 22nd or July 23rd. And I think we had 2 or 3 days to submit that information to the statewide office. And of course, all of us on our campuses had discussions of potential cuts, and we could, put that list together. But since then, we have come together and we have designed with all the chancellors, our leadership teams, and the presidents of our academic senates, as well as other faculty, another concept. And I invite you to go to slide number 20 before we talk about the proportional cuts, because it's relevant here. And understanding that that is kind of small print to read off of the screen, we brought hard copies that I'm hoping maybe Brandy can distribute so that it'd be easier for you to, with the chair's permission. It's exact same text as slide number 20. So what we are looking at here is not the status quo. It is not 3 universities taking proportional cuts, but it's a whole new idea that is an integrated University of Alaska consortium model, a consortium of 3 separately accredited universities that work in concert with each other. So the consortium model is not something brand new. It exists in several areas of the country. Some of the most notable university and college consortia include the Claremont colleges in California, the 5 colleges, it's called, in Amherst, Massachusetts. There's a consortium of universities and colleges in New Orleans. There's one in Baltimore. There's one in Philadelphia, Atlanta. So this is a common structure for individual universities to come together to share back office processes and to consolidate their academic programs in an effort to be more efficient and more student focused. So what we have outlined here are some of the benefits and risks of this particular model. We followed the president's lead. He did the same for the one university model. So again, to start, we want to give you this broader context, and then we're happy to go into our specific ideas for cuts. But to answer Regent Parker's question, I think we all have agreed that we did our cuts separately, but now that we're in these very robust conversations as three universities, that we would go back and see how we coordinate and collaborate, say, on our academic cuts. How do we make sure that we provide the greatest amount of access and the greatest amount of array of programs across Alaska by working together? So some of the benefits is, first of all, this structure maintains a well-understood system of post-secondary education in the state. So the students understand that we have different universities, and it's least disruptive to them because we continue to exist as three universities. So there is a recent example of where a top-down rapid structural change had a negative effect on students in the state of Alaska, and that would be in the case of education programs. So as you know, during this academic year, there was a major structural change where this body voted to disestablish initial licensure programs at UAA and instead offer those through UAS and UAF. So these data have been provided to you in the past, and I'd like to repeat that so that you can see what we're looking at in terms of student enrollments in education programs. So at UAA in 2018, we have had 454 students in education programs. And in 2019, we have 123 students. And that's a decrease of 73%. That's not surprising given that the programs were disestablished. At UAF in 2018, they had 254 students. And in 2019, they have, and these data are from July 22nd. So there may be some variation. It's live data, UA data. As of July 22nd, they had 301 students. That's an increase of 47 students, or 19%. UAS in 2018 had 183 students, and in 2019 they have 206 students. That's an increase of 23 students, or 13%. So if we add all that up, the totals are as follows. In 2018, across the state, we had 884 students enrolled in education programs. As of July 22nd, last week, we had 616 students enrolled in education programs. That's a decrease of 268 students, or a decrease of 30% from 2018. Now, if we look at student enrollments across all disciplines, we're also seeing a decline across the system, but that decline is 7.3%. So there's definitely something going on in education. And one of the changes that occurred between 2018 and 2019 is a structural change that wasn't well explained to the students and didn't take the time to market it. So again, this consortium model avoids that potential problem by maintaining a structure that students understand and their families understand. It's simpler because we are not drastically changing it. It's an adaptation of what exists. The other thing the consortium model allows us to do is leverage already strong local and regional relationships across the regions. So these go to our public service mission of the university, and also our ability to raise additional funds from donors and corporate sponsors and partners and the like. So those are threatened if you drastically change the structure. The consortium model also maintains continuity of accreditation. So as we eliminate programs, consolidate programs, as we will need to do given our budget reductions, we can do that in a more smooth way with what we call substantive change applications to NWCCU. And this allows us to have continuous accreditation. If there's any disruption in accreditation, that affects our ability to maintain their federal financial aid. So the issue of accreditation and continuous education accreditation is important. I have gone through a couple major structural changes. And in Wisconsin, when we did a change of control application to our regional accreditor, it was hundreds of pages long and took a long time to write. And then it was reviewed by the staff, and it was reviewed by the board, and it was voted on by the board at their regular meeting. So there is a time frame in there. In the meantime, you want to maintain accreditation. So I think that it's a huge benefit of maintaining what we have and not disrupting it by going to the integrated consortium model. This model allows us to leverage significant investments that we have made on all the campuses in terms of marketing, student recruitment, and student success. At the last regular board meeting, you heard a presentation from all of us in terms of our efforts there and the data and improvements in terms of student enrollment, student applications, and student success. I should point out with regard to accreditation, both as Professor Williams pointed out, that UAA and UAS both had their regional accreditation reaffirmed for 7 years. And within that, both of us received accolades and commendations for our student-centered and programs and our student success. So it would be less disruptive to keep those in place if indeed we do care about our students. And then finally, we think this model, the integrated model, builds on all the work that was done for strategic pathways. I've been, in my own mind, calling it strategic pathways on steroids, where we're even getting more focused and working more collaboratively, both on back office administrative processes as academic programs. Again, with people who are student-centered, with people who have an existing relationship and the trust of the organizations that we are going to be changing. So now I'm happy to pass it off to my colleague, Chancellor Caulfield from UAS.
Yep, go ahead, Regent Purdue.
Thank you, Chancellor Sandine. And I guess the house on fire question is my question. And how does this differ today from what we have today? We have the ability today to collaborate inside our system. Does this envision a board of regents, or are these independent organizations that cooperate together? How is this different than today? And how fast can we move in this model?
We can start moving tomorrow under this model. After the July 22nd meeting, where I heard the statement that the universities will never cooperate with each other, there's too much competition and infighting, I placed calls to my two colleagues and I said, shall we start talking? Shall we see what we can do? And over the weekend, we convened a group, and I have a list of the people who are involved in it, including the 3 chancellors, most of the vice chancellors from all 3 institutions, the 3 presidents of the faculty senate, and additional faculty and administrators. And we work to create a collaborative model that's we have a little more detail than we were able to provide here. And so that shows that, yes, maybe the house on fire, or I recall a statement I've heard many times, in higher education for a long time. And there's kind of a cynical statement that goes like this: a budget cut is a terrible thing to waste. And the idea behind it is it's a time and opportunity for reform and reinvention. So I think what's different is that we all recognize the challenge that we face with this budget cut, and that we are committed together to make this happen quickly under this model. And it wouldn't require separate accreditation. Separate boards. This is the same board. We're the same 3 universities, but we're working in a consortium model under this board. Did that answer your question?
Regent Parker.
Thank you. I would, two questions. One, I would ask Chancellor Caulfield and Chancellor White if they concur with the statement from Chancellor Sandine about the collaboration and cooperation between the campuses. And then secondly, Chancellor Sandine, you referenced a presentation. Do we have that presentation?
No, you do not. You have this one page.
Can we get a copy of that presentation?
We can get copies if the chair approves. Okay.
Regent.
Oh, and you wanted to hear from the other two chancellors?
The answer to your question is yes.
1 second, Regent Banya.
I just had one question. We have a couple of C words there. We have cooperation, we have collaboration. I can't help but think about another one, and that is competition. And I don't see, to me, competition is healthy. I like competition in my business. It makes me better. You must, I would think that you had to speak of competition. There should be some anyway, so I'd like you to comment on that.
Yeah, Chancellor, one of us, Chancellor White.
We came up with the word cooperation, which is competition and cooperation. And I mentioned last week, of course, competition drives innovation. And so as each university is looking at their market and their market sectors, and actually UAF, UAA, and UAS have different market sectors, how do we develop enrollment management strategies, things that work for the markets that we are attracting. And that, frankly, for UAF, as a research university, we're trying to develop competitive strategies against Oregon State and Montana State and Idaho. Those are competitors for us. So, yeah, collaboration was the word. I think it's in that document. Thank you.
Well, that's fine, the competition with those other universities, but specifically, I was speaking about competition between the three.
And I think that we gain more by being on the spectrum closer to more cooperation than competition. And even if we look at where our students come from in our three different universities, we don't compete for students within Alaska. Very small number of students apply to multiple universities. So from that aspect, we don't have to worry about that key competition. So I think that, yeah, in some places our faculty are competing for grants perhaps, or for publications, but we can achieve more by maintaining a certain level of competition, but leaning far more toward cooperation and collaboration.
Okay, that sounds fine. At the same time, as I said a couple of minutes ago, I don't see anything wrong with competition. I think it's good.
Yeah, we don't either. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Regent Hargrave.
Mr. Chairman, my question is, what's happening to the statewide administration in this? Is it gone?
No, it is not gone. Perhaps Chancellor Caulfield can speak to that.
If I may, actually what I'd like to do, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, is continue on with the presentation that we had, which will include a response to Regent Hargrave's question.
Please go ahead.
Continuing with what my colleague has started here, one of the strengths that we believe comes from the enhanced integrated consortium model is our ability to respond effectively to non-traditional students who are place committed. And most of the students in the University of Alaska system are what we characterize as non-traditional. That means they're not between 18 and 24 years of age. Most are not living in a dormitory somewhere around a quad. And many of these students can take advantage of online opportunities, and certainly many of them do currently. But there are also a number of students, including especially first-generation college students, especially those who don't have a lot of support systems around them, who do need localized hands-on support. And I've been a part of teaching in a number of those programs, and they've had great success in ensuring that those students can be successful, especially in their first semester or two, so that they can go on to be able to complete their degree. Another thing that's important, we believe, is that the consortium model expands opportunities for the statewide collaboration, coordination, and perhaps, yes, competition, alignment of academic programs in an inclusive way. And importantly, that involves our stakeholders, our faculty, our staff, and our students in those conversations. And I think one of the points we wanted to make was not including those stakeholders in the conversation and the decision-making process leaves them without buy-in to this. And I think that buy-in is very important to the process.
Chancellor, could I interrupt you for a second? Regent O'Neill had a question.
Why would the student support change, whether it's 3 universities, consortia, or 1 university? Why would that change?
I think the concern would be that if we end up with a single college or a single program based in one location, that much of the delivery of those would inevitably be through online and other mechanisms, and you wouldn't have faculty necessarily in those campuses or those universities teaching in those programs.
But that's based upon opinion. That's not based upon what the plan would actually look like, right? So what my question is because we do this all over the state currently, we have robust learning centers where we provide student support, where they have local innovation and entrepreneurship. So why would that change?
Well, if the bulk of the programs delivered are online instead of having faculty in a classroom in front of you, that would be the challenge. And with the budget cuts that we're talking about, inevitably we would not have an array of faculty in various disciplines in all the different campuses. So it would be a reduction, I would say, in the face-to-face opportunities that many students would have in our campuses.
So and I'm just looking at big picture and asking, as I ask these questions. So when I look at the 2 options, what I see in the consortium is a lot more, I consider middle management, right? And so we would still pay for all of those functions. And if we move to a single university system, we would have a single system, but we would then be, my thought, and I'm not sure if this is the case, is that we then can ensure that we leave more resources intact for the faculty in the classrooms.
Well, that assumes that we will not be eliminating administrative middle management positions within the consortium model. So we all in our individual budgets have identified significant reductions in administration. So, but the thing is, the people who are determining what those services are locally have local knowledge, and they're trusted and known by those.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that it should matter at the local level. I would think that our values and what we say guide us should apply regardless of what structure we're talking about. Because we're talking about a structure here right now. We're not talking about actually what's happening in the structure as it relates to people. And the relationship should still stay the same if we are governed by our values.
But it's more bureaucratic. If there is if you have to wait forever for an answer because there's only one person at a far distance away who hasn't visited your campus in, months and doesn't have that local knowledge. So what are you giving up with a structure that seems logical? What are you giving up? So under our model, it retains more of the direct contact in delivery of services and less bureaucracy because we're maintaining the 3 units. And again, I want to reiterate that all 3 of us have identified significant reductions in administration under this model. So there will be fewer administrators. There's no doubt about that.
And do we have a copy of your budgets to show us?
Yes, you do. And we'll review those after we've gone through this.
Because I don't see it in this handout.
It's in the packet.
It's in the president's packet, so starting on page 15. So slide number 15, 16, and 17.
I thought you had a different set of numbers. That's what I was asking about. I've seen these numbers.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, do you have a different set of numbers as it relates to your proposal? That's my question.
No, we did not have the time to be able to develop that, but we talked about it in concept.
But it's the same, right? I mean, the consortium model is just the 3 universities with cuts.
Yeah, although we're going to get
assumes these
together and
reductions. Yeah.
see what we can do together.
Excuse me. So Regent Parker and then Tuber.
With respect to the learning centers, there have been impacts to the students, particularly at the community campuses. While there maybe hasn't been any change on the Anchorage campus, Fairbanks, or Juneau, go to the community campuses. There have been impacts, and the people that were there to help the students are being eliminated and won't be there, and it will be difficult for the students to get the help that they need. And if we're focused on the students, keep that in mind.
So if I may, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, I have one more question for Regent Tuber.
Thank you, Chancellor Caulfield, and to the Chancellor. So my question is more a request, and that is, would you be mindful of the concerns that the regions are expressing in trying to detail what the differentiation is between what we've heard as a promoted concept and what you're now promoting, so that we can attribute where the cost savings will be as you go through your presentation?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Rick.
So if I may, the next point speaks to Regent Hargrave's question, and what we have discussed in the context of this consortium model is a lean statewide office, continuation of a statewide office, but a lean statewide office that focuses on external relations, compliance, stewardship of shared strategic resources, leadership, governance, and strategic vision. And I note that this is much of what came out of a statewide transition task force that was conducted in 2015, a leaner statewide system that focuses on those high-level leadership roles and responsibilities. Also, as we've already touched on, the consortium model in our minds would incorporate implementation of common academic planning and registrar processes, alignment of those to help create that seamless student experience that we've discussed earlier. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to my colleague, Chancellor White.
Yeah, just continuing down the page, one of the things that continuing with 3 universities is it offers decentralized decision-making in many respects, which occurs now, which promotes agility, innovation, entrepreneurship within the system. And I just think about, we have a government of the United States, we still have states, and we still have governors. We have governors of states. We're all Alaskans, but we also have cities and municipalities that have mayors and likewise. So I think that is a model that promotes decentralized decision-making, as the 3 universities does. Optimizes continued opportunities for cost reduction, as has already been mentioned. And as Kathy mentioned at the beginning, avoids disruption and a disruption of our strong existing relationships in the communities. I think that another thing, and as we've talked about before, all of the regions are different and all of the universities are different, and the universities have grown up in serving these different regions and their constituents. And I'll just put the Regent Hargraves, your heart to rest at UAF. We totally embrace CTC. They're not big finger benders or whatever. They're 30% of our students, so it is they are all part of UAF. And I'll just pass it back to Kathy, but just wanted to say that, there's been a lot of data discussion, and I'm an engineer. Data makes a big difference. Data, people's lives depend on data as an engineer, but data can be used in lots of different ways. And all of the different talks about data and this is bad or this is good has been really hard on faculty and staff and students across the system. And I just want you to know that you've got a great university. You've got a great university system, 3 great universities, and great university faculty and staff who are dedicated to their jobs. I also just recognize dedicated students and student athletes and people who are committed to their education. Thank you.
So Davies, this is Regent Beretta.
Regent Beretta, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know that I'm actually at another strategy session for another board that I sit on. And so I will have to be signing off here shortly. But my comments in regards to this, this where we are right now is I'm suggesting that next week, Monday or Tuesday, that we have a finance audit committee meeting to look more closely at some of the numbers that that are important to my mind in seeing this big picture, and that we have more time to look at the numbers that are being contemplated through this new proposal that the chancellors are rolling out right now. You know, I want to be there. This is very important to me, and I think that we need to have information to make the best decision. My other suggestion is that your structure committee that you just devised today should put on their agenda governance, so that the Board of Regents has an opportunity to look at different structures of governance that are, you know, are happening at other universities and other organizations that could facilitate a different structure than what we currently have. So I will be signing off within the next 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Regent Hargreaves.
Chairman, to the chancellors, we talked about a leaner statewide administrative structure. What happens to the local campus? Do we see any administrator reduction that would save money at the local campus?
Yes, you will see significant reduction in administration at the local campuses. And in fact, at UAA, we've already reduced over $500,000, $500,000 in positions. Plus, that's not counting people who have left voluntarily. So we're probably up in the millions, and those positions won't be refilled. So we will see dramatic changing. Now, if I can address that issue of the statewide office for a moment, and we all really regret that we're put in kind of an adversarial position here. We thought we were presenting the president's option number 2, which is maintain the 3 universities and how that would look. And so I don't want you to take this in an adversarial way. All throughout this budget cut, I think my public stance has been fact-based, no hyperbole. Let's just be calm and stick with the facts. So I frame my next statement in that spirit. Collectively, I believe the 3 campuses pay something like $38 million for services from the statewide office. Am I in the ballpark there, Myron? How much is it then that we all pay in?
I just don't have that tally just right handy. There's a number of things like insurance, premiums or risk allocations for claims. There's some for IT. But our total, I think about a little bit more, our total interagency receipts, as it's called, is about $12 million.
Is that? I think it might be more than that. It'd be great for us to look at that so that we really know, because we have a vastly different estimate in how much it is. Anyway, so if we look at what services do we receive for that amount of money that we're paying, do we have responsive services? Are they similar to what we would get in the open market? I would say that we have a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of delay. One of my colleagues here talked about IT and how long it takes to get any modification to a system, or how long it takes to make decisions about information technology at a time when we have to make those decisions very rapidly. I'm not picking on anyone in particular, however it might seem like it. I am surprised that sometimes a simple contract is required to be reviewed by general counsel at the statewide office, and sometimes it can take 3 weeks. So that inhibits our ability to move. I have one investigative report that was up there for 3 months. And so the question is, how much are we paying and what services do we get? And what is the accountability and what voice do we have in terms of what we need and what we get? So that is the issue right now. And when you talk about reducing administration, let me give you some facts. So the South Dakota system of higher education in their system office has 27 people in it, 4 of whom are chief executives, and they handle a total of 26,000 full-time equivalent students over 6 campuses, plus they oversee some private institutions. In this office, there are 184 people, 7 of whom are on the executive level. And we have, I think, a little bit north of 16,000 full-time equivalent students. So again, I just want you to be fair when you're talking about cutting administration. Look at all of administration. And how do we push the dollars closer to the delivery of programs and services with our consumers? That is our students, our partners, our funding agencies, and so forth. Be fair about that.
Risk.
Oh, and you have some risks there listed on the sheet, and I think, those are self-explanatory. I mean, we have to work really hard and quickly and balance the trade-offs between centralized shared services and what we do uniquely. I think you can probably go over those.
Regina Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chancellors, in your estimation, say by some miracle, money is restored via the legislature. Is this the easiest model to reverse any cuts that we've made, any program eliminations, et cetera?
Yes, it would be, because we're not making a drastic structural change. So,
Ms. Regent Harkness.
The local campuses have their own attorneys at this time.
No, we don't.
That's all splat from the statewide.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily say that we would have our own, but we would have shared services where we had some input into what happens there and what services we receive.
Taking $125,000 a year and hiring a local firm.
Yeah, that's a possibility too, if that seems like it's the best option.
Thank you.
So now we've been asked to go through the proportional cuts.
Can I?
Sorry.
Before you leave
Parker.
that.
David, it's a deal.
Regent Anderson, go ahead.
I'm trying to remain calm. But I'm wondering where this new cooperative, collaborative, I can't remember the word that Chancellor White came up with. Why all of a sudden is this in the forefront? We have, I've been on the board for a number of years, longest serving other than Mary, and we have asked things of the campuses to accomplish, and you can't tell me that this cooperative, this new era of operation is going to turn this around in a matter of a month, that we need to make these changes. This must have been a real, excuse the term, come to Jesus meeting that you guys have had. But, we have tried to get cooperation between the campuses, and it is virtually non-existent. And so I am looking at all of your comments with a pretty jaundiced eye. I just wanted you to know that up front. And as far as more bureaucracy, I have a real hard time thinking that this would be less bureaucracy than a single unit. And haven't we been moving toward and promoting e-delivery and the expansion of that? And I don't understand Chancellor Caulfield's comment about that it would be detrimental to have more e-delivery. Thanks.
Thank you. Chancellor Caulfield.
If I may, just to clarify, I didn't say that it would be detrimental. What I said was there are many students, I believe, who are not well served by online delivery, just as there are many students who take full advantage of it and welcome it and appreciate the access that it's provided. But my concern is if we shift largely towards more online delivery and programs that are based elsewhere and campuses and students who are simply recipients of online delivery, and that's the bulk of their program, I'm concerned that many of our most vulnerable students, our first generation students, those who are at a distance from our main campuses, will be at risk.
And if I could dovetail on that comment, often what happens is when students first come to us, they are nervous, they're first generation, they're not necessarily perfectly prepared for college level work. But once they get their feet under them and they understand, then they can transfer into online programs. But to think that fully online program from beginning to end is suitable for the majority of our students, it's probably not the case. They need a little bit more direct support in the beginning, at least.
We have been trying to get this seamless transition thing between secondary and post-secondary worked out for 6 years now, and it has never happened.
Regent Parker.
So,
Regent Hargraves.
Back to the chancellors. One comment. The first bullet under your benefits, based on a lot of emails that we've received, we've gotten significant number from students, and this is something that's very important to students and that we've heard as we look at whatever path we take. If I'm enrolled in a program in my hometown because I'm working and taking care of my family, I don't want you to move the program away so that I have to go to another campus. So making this so that it is not painful to students is going to be very important. But one of the questions that Dale asked that the chancellors haven't responded to is, why now? Why are you collaborating and cooperating and working together as a team now?
Well, I mean, I'll just, since the microphone's pointing at me. First of all, I mean, I think it's important, and I'll emphasize Kathy's point that as I understand, what we're doing is putting some flesh on the bones of the president's option number 2, is what does that look like? We have a 41% cut, right? Nothing is going to look the same. So, I mean, to me, we sat down and came up with $68 million worth of cuts. $68 million worth of cuts. If that's what we end up getting, that is going to significantly change, and we will not be able to operate business as usual. And so, for me, you know, there is nothing we can. I mean, there is nothing but benefit from collaborating across the system. I mean, I agree. I mean, I've always leaned towards entrepreneurism and innovation. So I think that as we sat down and talked about where are areas that are good for competition, and frankly, you know, we've talked a lot about e-learning, and President Gamble said, I want everybody working on e-learning. And everybody started working on e-learning all across the system. I was a faculty at the time, and we incentivized everybody to work on e-learning because President Gamble had identified that as a path for the future. And a lot of stuff sprung up. And right now we have one of the best e-learning programs. We just need to get it out there. So I think there's advantage, and that was a case where everybody was competing, and that is largely consolidated at this point around the few centers that are delivering the most effectively from an e-learning standpoint. So in any event, nothing is going to be the same moving forward, regardless of where the structure goes. Thank you.
Regent Hargraves and then Purdue.
Mr. Chairman, what happens to the university's foundation under your model?
It stays the same because it supports all three units.
As a statewide?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And does one campus remain or become a land grant campus, or does land grant still apply to the whole three sites?
I mean, UAF is the original land grant institution, and that's where the cooperative extension is. And I mean, I'm assuming that does not, that is kind of what we're talking about. Is this is largely from a structural standpoint remaining the same.
Maintaining our separate identities, but working together behind the scenes in a more robust way.
Regent Purdue.
Well, only good can come from that, that's for sure. And that is a good message to hear from you three. I guess the question I have is, well, Chancellor Sandeen, you made a really good comment at the last meeting. You said that in your experience, and I don't want to misquote you, but I think you said, maintain the existing structure and do the reductions and then study the issue of consolidation. You'd been through a consolidation before. And that appealed to me. That does appeal to me. The thing is, we have this number, 136. I think that's the number. 136. Whether it's 85 and something else or whatever. Right now, today, in law, the university has 136 less. So, I don't think that there's a regent here that wants to change our model precipitously. It's very scary. Accreditation, those issues that were raised in the faculty paper, those are real. I understand that those, I don't understand enough about accreditation that you do, but I know those are real. The only reason we're here is because we don't have enough money. And I think that this house on fire concept is something that we should really grab a hold of. And we as regents are struggling with that. I can see that. We're really struggling because we want to maintain the good things that we have, our regional identities, our great people that we have, the great staff. So the real question is the question the president asked us earlier, which is, what kind of a hole are we in? Now, maybe help is coming. But at this point, we don't know that. And so this is why these dramatic options are on the table.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I think what we're saying is we realize the house is on fire. And we have, in fact, gone through the exercise the president asked us to do. There are 3 slides here that show how each of the 3 universities would address that in terms of budget reductions. And so to Chancellor Sandeen's comment, I think we are all riveted. We're focused on, number one, the house is on fire. The cuts need to be made short of some fire department showing up in the next week or two. And at the same time, going to a single accreditation, we believe, has significant downsides. And so what we're trying to lay out here is our perspective on, number one, how we would address the immediate needs for cuts to address the fire that's in our house, and yet also not throw out the distinctive qualities of the 3 accredited universities, which we believe serve our students well.
If I could add to that briefly, I think one of the things that is different now than in the past is who do we have in leadership positions. And you do have 2 relatively new chancellors and one who's always been collaborative, I think. And our faculty senate leadership and our vice chancellors have been working together. So I do think it is a moment in time where this can work.
Regent O'Neill and then Parker. Actually, could I take, Councilor Hostina, did you have a?
It's not a legal point. It's a consideration. I guess that's relevant here.
Okay, go ahead. Let me go ahead with him and then.
Okay.
So as you downsize an institution and an organization, if you maintain, three units in your organization, you are ultimately, inevitably going to be spreading resource more thinly across those three organizations. For example, you have, with 3 universities, you have to have 3 Title IX offices, 3 Title IX coordinators. You must maintain those because you have 3 separately accredited universities, and that's what OCR requires. So as you downsize, the resources that are available for functions like that have to be maintained to maintain 3 units will be constricted and constrained. Ideally, we have superbly functional Title IX offices, coordinators who are thoughtful and exercise impeccable judgment, and investigators who can defend what findings they make. But right now, we will be downsizing the resource potentially available to those 3 offices, and we have to coordinate between all 3 of those offices, and that's why we have a statewide person, because OCR required us to do that. We have a statewide person coordinating and doing quality control for those 3 units. It's one example of the type of issue that you have that is distinctive between one organization and 3 organizations, and that's what I wanted to raise. It is a legal concern for me because we have many compliance concerns that have to be, when you have 3 universities, that have to be effectuated at each university. It's a factor that doesn't require a lot of data to grasp. You either have one function, and obviously that function is going to be spread over 3 locations or however many locations we have, or have to reach out to those locations, but it doesn't have to be replicated in every regard when it's 1 versus 3. Now, that's only one consideration in a very difficult situation that you're in, but it is a legal concern at some level, and it's a compliance concern at some level, Anyway.
Thank you. Regent O'Neill.
Thank you. So we're talking about accreditation, and I know President Johnson, you've been in touch with the accreditation leadership. And I'd just like to hear from your perspective as we consider both these options and the conversation, maybe a little bit more information about some of the conversations that you've had with the accrediting entities.
Well, if you don't mind, Regent O'Neill, I would take that up in the next chapter here when we talk about a single university model and its benefits, risks, what that would look like. And if at all possible, continue to allow regents to explore with the chancellors here the 3 university model.
And just before we go on, I want to take the pulse of the regents here. It's 20 minutes to 12 right now. We expect to have the governors, either Mike Barnhill or the governor himself, calling in at noon. So we're going to have a break for that. The way the conversation is going right now, I don't believe that we're going to get to the conversation that President Johnson just indicated, so without going on into the afternoon. So the question is, are we willing to extend the meeting in terms of, so I can plan for how we're going to break for lunch and break for the president, or the governor, and et cetera. So I guess given the way the conversation went, my sense is that we're willing to extend into the afternoon. Is there anybody that objects strongly to that?
Mr. Chair, So the meeting today was scheduled until 1 o'clock. I would propose as an alternative that we might choose to recess and reconvene at a time defined, but to decide in the midst of our meeting today that we're going to simply continue into the afternoon would be a challenge.
Regent Perdue.
I don't know how much of a challenge it would be for how many regents, but I would say that the expense of getting here and the fact that I'm here and my flight's not till 5 p.m. I mean, and that we're in an urgent situation, maybe we ought to take a vote on that, on extending till 4 p.m.
Okay, any other comments on that? Regent Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we know if Regent Beretta would be available later to participate in the vote if we move it to 4?
It didn't sound like it, but I don't know.
Maybe we could call and ask.
I'll text her.
The vote was just whether or not we want to extend the meeting.
The vote I'm referring to, of course, is the big one.
Yeah, I don't. That's
I just feel
for later in the meeting.
I think we just need to take that vote.
Okay, let's. So, I'd like to have a vote on whether or not you would like to extend the meeting until 4. Brandy.
Regent Perdue?
Yes.
Regent Garrett?
Yes.
Regent Banya?
Yes.
Regent O'Neill? Yes. Regent Parker?
Yes.
Regent Hargraves?
Yes.
Regent Beretta? Regent Tuber? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yes.
Thank you. Regent Anderson?
No.
I'm sorry, was that yes?
It's a no.
No. Okay.
Regent Hughes?
I have another.
Regent Davies?
Yes.
So we have 9 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay. So we will continue the meeting past our meeting with the governor or the governor's representative, which is still scheduled at noon. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And lunch is also ready if you want to get protein before then.
Regent Banya.
I wanted to know if I could ask one more question before we adjourn for lunch about the core commitments that you have on your list.
Go ahead.
If we could do that. I was wondering if, when you discussed your core commitments, if you talked about ways that you might increase funding other than depending solely upon the state.
That's been a discussion among all of us for some time, and we are doing that in terms of increased donor support, fees for products and services, and research funding.
I would think with the current situation being what it is, that would be a very important or perhaps a core commitment, because this could only be the beginning of cuts to the university. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, so.
Regent Banya will add it to the list. I think we agree that would be fine. Thank you.
Regent Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the General Counsel's comments regarding Title IX, while we don't know the vision that the president has for one university, if there's going to be one campus, or if we will still have community campuses, campus in Anchorage, campus in Juneau, regarding Title IX, if we have a campus in Anchorage and if we have a campus in Juneau, there will still have to be Title IX people there. While they may report to a consolidated statewide office, there would still be the need to have those people there, because we can't rely on Fairbanks to reach out to Cachet when she has an issue, or to reach out to Andy